This is a Bhekisisa podcast.
Welcome to Vape Universe, a limited podcast series from the Bhekisisa Center for Health Journalism. I'm Paul McNally. In this series of 3 episodes, we're going to explore the world of vaping in South Africa and whether it is a valid, less harmful alternative to smoking. Let's start with Brenda, 60-something from Sandton, who went to extreme lengths when she was a teenager to hide her smoking from her disapproving father.
I remember having the lit stompie in my hand and I brought it in towards the inside of my palm and I sort of moved my hand so that he wouldn't see the smoke.
This was decades ago, and while she and a friend were smoking outside, her dad came round the corner to talk to her.
If you keep your hand still, you can see the smoke, but if you move your hand, the smoke dissipates. So I moved my hand with this hot stompie there, and by the time he had left, I had burnt a beautiful, lovely blister in the inside of my palm.
Brenda, now a mother and grandmother, would go on to smoke cigarettes and cigars on and off for 40 years. At certain points, 2 boxes a day. And then 6 years ago, she discovered vaping. And finally, after a continuous, lifelong obsession with nicotine, vaping enabled her to smoke without all the guilt she had associated with it.
Your mouth didn't taste revolting after it because it's all these lovely fruity flavors. And again, the deviant behavior started in that I thought that I could vape. There was no smell attached to it. It tasted delicious.
She can still fondly remember the first vape she was introduced to. It was called the Stig.
It was a little black, it almost looked like a USB stick. It looked exactly like that. And my son had started smoking these. He's never been a smoker of cigarettes, and he started coming home with these. And he took an odd puff now and again. I thought, well, let me try this.
The fact that her son got enticed into vaping without even being a smoker is an issue we will get into later in this series. But for Brenda, she has stopped smoking cigarettes and is now firmly on the vape.
They look beautiful. They feel lovely in your hand. They have delightful colors. They are elegant. They taste wonderful. You can choose anything from grape to watermelon to passion fruit to mint to whatever tickles your fancy on that day.
But soon, her vaping is out of control.
You know, I didn't realize how addictive vaping was. I really didn't. It was like a dummy. I sucked on a vape all day long. It was the first thing that I did as I opened my eyes in the morning. It was the very last thing that I did before I went to sleep at night. If I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I would take my vape with me even then.
She was hooked on vaping more viciously than anything ever before. The e-cigarette, or electronic nicotine delivery system, has been around since the 20th century. The tobacco industry developed a nicotine aerosol in the 90s, although Chinese pharmacist Han Lik is often named as inventing the modern e-cigarette in Beijing in 2003. Han's father, a heavy smoker, died from lung cancer. Fearing he was heading the same way, he created his own device to administer nicotine. Ironically, the vape didn't stop him from smoking. Instead, he became a dual user, a smoker and a vapor.
The perfect time for a vaping advert.
Yes.
Hiked up from down there. We climbed up that and we couldn't even climb up a flight of steps 7 and 13 years ago.
People like Rob Fisher from Durban swear by their vapes. Rob smoked 40 to 60 cigarettes a day for 40 years and says vaping is the only way he was able to quit smoking.
I know it's dramatic and it's a cliche, but vaping definitely saved my life. I was a very heavy smoker, 40 to 60 a day for 40 odd years. And just about 8 years ago, I got my first Twisp and I've never touched a cigarette since.
Twisp. Taste tomorrow, today.
The Twisp was a type of e-cigarette marketed as great for beginners and potentially less harmful than smoking because they don't burn tobacco, smoke, and tar, although no studies are provided to back this up. Back in 2014, my dad, who has smoked his whole life, decided to get into vaping. He bought the whole set, the vape, the charger, the fluids. They all came in a little wooden suitcase. He tried it a couple of times, filling his bar with big clouds of candy-scented smoke, and then never vaped again. He went back to the cigarettes. And I think part of that was he wanted it to end. He liked the idea of lighting up a cigarette, smoking it, and stubbing it out. Vaping doesn't really offer that. I find the swirl of opinions around vaping pretty confusing. Is vaping better for your health than cigarettes? How much of the pro-vaping stance is backed by science? And how much of it comes down to effective marketing campaigns paid for by the tobacco industry? Because let's be clear, big tobacco and big vape are very much the same thing. Should we be pushing people to switch and stop smoking cigarettes, or is it the same devil? People like Rob, who advocate for vapes, say they are the only real effective way to quit cigarettes. Though it does make me think of the inventor of vaping, who is now a dual user.
And I tried hypnosis, I tried drugs, everything. Chewing gum, nothing had worked. I honestly felt it was an easy way to give up. I went through quite a lot of withdrawal symptoms, headaches, and I thought, oh, geez, the vaping's giving me a headache, but it wasn't. It was all the poisons leaving my system. And after about a month and a half, I could taste and breathe, and I knew I would never, ever touch a cigarette again. Now I walk between 6 and 8 kilometers a day. I don't wake up during the night unable to breathe and thinking I'm going to die.
One thing I need to say about Rob is that he is embedded in the vaping community. He's an admin for eCigs SA, which is the Reddit for vape enthusiasts. You can log into the platform and talk to other like-minded vapers. You can get recipes for vape juices and order DIY mixing kits to make your own flavors. All this paraphernalia is part of the appeal of vaping.
It's a community on steroids because we're all in it for the same reason, to give up smoking. And when you do give up smoking, eventually after trying every other option, it becomes almost a religion for you.
He is also evangelical about converting people to the vape.
I mean, I'll walk up to somebody in the street and tell them that I see a smoker and tell them that they need to vape. So I'll still do that. I can't help myself.
Rob also takes his passion offline and into the real world once a year when a massive event called VapeCon happens. It's an opportunity for people to gather and celebrate all things vape.
We go to these expos to meet our friends and to talk about vaping and to talk about new products.
But the fun and community are essentially leading to the same addiction, nicotine. In 2008, the World Health Organization made it known that it didn't consider e-cigarettes a legitimate aid to stop smoking. It said that while it didn't discount the possibility that e-cigarettes could be an aid to giving up cigarettes, there was no evidence for this. In 2020, Turkey banned the import of e-cigarettes and related products as part of a campaign to reduce tobacco use. it is one of 34 countries that did the same thing. While the UK plans to ban the sale of tobacco products to people born after 2009, this is sort of a way to phase smoking out over time. They are also introducing separate environmental legislation to ban disposable vapes. However, sectors of British society continue to champion vaping. Back here at home in South Africa, University of Cape Town lung expert Richard van Zyl-Smit, who researches smoking and vaping, particularly among teens, doesn't think that the vaping industry has the health of smokers in mind. And this is kind of the crux of the matter. Who has our best interests?
I think the health benefits of vaping are horrendously overstated. But again, compared to a tobacco cigarette, which has a 50% chance of killing you, yes, they are potentially a safer alternative. But I really struggle to be convinced that the 7 million plus smokers in South Africa all need to be transitioned to 7 million vapers. We should aim to transform those 7 million smokers into 7 million fresh air breathers.
The Global Adult Tobacco Survey put the number of smokers in South Africa at about 11 million in 2021. Whatever the figure, Richard knows because of his extensive research that high school students are developing an addiction to nicotine through vaping, be it in the classroom, on the school field, or at home.
We need to be clear that vaping is being taken up hugely by adolescents, and that's got nothing to do with harm reduction. That's the vaping industry targeted marketing for adolescents.
And Brenda, from what she has seen, agrees.
I think it's a very big problem in young children. I have heard from various sources that children at the age of 10 are smoking at schools, or taking vapes to school, and I find that horrifying. I really do find that very, very scary.
An analysis of many studies published in the New England Journal of Medicine has shown vaping to be as bad for you as puffing on traditional cigarettes when it comes to developing diseases like strokes and heart conditions. Johns Hopkins University researchers have found thousands of unknown chemicals in electronic cigarettes. Despite these findings, vaping has taken off in many countries. Richard says that we simply don't yet fully know if vaping is safer than cigarettes or not. For your lungs, yes, it's safer. But for the rest of you, well, there's an increasing body of evidence emerging that vaping could be dangerous with regards to developing cancers, for example. He says we needed 50 years of research to be sure that cigarettes cause lung cancer, and we are only 20 years into vaping. So we just need more time. Over in Santon, wannabe ex-smoker Brenda admits to being an ignorant vapor.
We still don't know very much about vaping, do we? I mean, we don't have the knowledge. The time span hasn't passed in which we can do research as to what the actual effects have been on people's health and people's lung capacity.
Brenda is a great example of someone who pushed all these doubts aside because she felt that it was better for her than smoking.
I was just so excited at that stage in time to be able to have something that didn't smell like a cigarette and I didn't smell like an ashtray. And I loved that. I loved that. It was a constant pleasure. Vaping and smoking becomes your best friend that you can turn to at any given stage, no matter what situation you are in on a day-to-day basis. And the relationship that you have with your box of cigarettes, and for the last 6 years, my vape, is an incredibly strong emotional bond.
Then last year, Brenda received the news that she was going to be a grandmother. This was life-changing, and it forced her to reflect on her situation and, importantly, her health.
I want to be a healthy grandmother. I want to be able to rush around with my grandchild. I want to be involved. I don't want to compromise myself in any way to affect that privilege that I have been blessed with.
For the first time, she starts to strategize. How is she going to give up this vape?
So then I started thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? Then I tried to research stopping vaping programs. No such thing. There are apps I know that I looked at. I can't remember what they were called. But the whole thing about those apps is that they tell you all the bad stuff and then they simply introduce you to Nicorette chewing gum. That's what I found, which is still nicotine. It's not really going to help anything. Okay, so you don't have the heated tobacco that you inhale into your lungs, but you're still taking in nicotine. It's not going to break that habit. And I didn't want to do that. So I phoned up Smoke Enders.
Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm from Smoke Enders, South Africa. I'm not here to tell you that smoking's bad for you. We all know that. It's old news and it's boring.
Smoke Enders claim to be able to provide a permanent solution to smoking. The program involves a 2-hour session, once a week for 6 weeks, and costs 3,500 Rand. That's about $200. Brenda had done the course decades before to stop cigarette smoking, and here she was phoning them again.
And I asked them whether they ran a program for vaping. And the lady was very honest with me, and she said that they don't have a stop vaping program as such, but they will be able to help me.
A couple of weeks went by. She thought about it, and eventually she paid her deposit and booked herself in.
However, in my first session, I was told that in order to give up vaping, I needed to start smoking cigarettes. Oh, no!
The advice she gets is that the only way she can quit vaping is to replace it with cigarette smoking again, and then give that up for one last time. This, to Brenda, seems insane, but she decides she will do it. And we will find out if this route is successful in the next episode. This has been Vape Universe, a limited podcast series from the Bhekisisa Centre for Health Journalism. I'm Paul McNally. Sound production was by Danny Boyson. Join me for the next episode.
That was a Bhekisisa podcast.